Hey guys, it's Rachel at From Moments to Milestones here today with our newest 3-card class kit featuring stamps and dies from Hero Arts. We're going to make these 3 cards here today. If you would purchase a kit, you get the instructions. There's a picture of each card and all the supplies I used to make the kit listed in the back. Before we get started, there are a few supplies you are going to need. So I have a little palette here with some Distress Ink re-inkers. I'm going to use those as a watercolor. If you don't have the re-inkers, maybe you just have the pad. You can smush those onto your surface and use that. Or any other watercolor you have. You could use markers or colored pencils, whatever you want to use to color. All the images today that we are coloring are cut out of watercolor paper, so they are made to take the water. These are the colors that we used. So I've got Mermaid Lagoon, Pumice Stone, Picked Raspberry, Vintage Photo, Mustard Seed, and Mowed Lawn. So those are the watercolors we're going to use. And then I also have my Mermaid Lagoon ink pad because we're going to need that for some blending later. And I just put a little drop, that's all it's going to take. And I'm using this watercolor brush pen here that already has water loaded, but you could use a regular paintbrush and water, however you want to do it. So let's see what our first card is. We're going to start with this one, the Thinking of You. I also have this. This is just a piece of cardstock inside one of these bags that we put our kits in. I'm going to use it as my palette if I want to blend any colors. So I have that as well. You could use a block or you could even do it on your surface if you have a nice glass surface. So what I need out of here, we're going to grab these watercolor images. They're kind of a cream color. So we're going to grab those out. You should have a branch, 3 flowers, and 2 birds. And I'm going to take all those little pieces out of the bird. And I'm going to start with the flowers. So I used the Pick Raspberry on those, and if you want a real deep color, you're going to need to use very little water. So I'm going to reach in and then put it down. So that's a very concentrated color. I'm not pushing and adding a lot of water, and I'm just going to paint it onto, so you can see as I add more water, the color lightens up. And then when it dries, it may dry a little lighter, and then we can go back and add more color if we want. And then I also have some paper towel just to clean my brush off when I want to change colors. Or if I've got too much water and I'm going to get this out of the way before I get ink on it. And the other thing you may want to have is a heating tool to dry them. I'm going to let those dry and move on to the birds, and then I'll come back and add more color if I want them to be darker. So the birds I did in blue. The feet I did do in some mustard seed, which I need a little bit more. I'm just going to show you how little it will take. So I just like to take it and just put a dot in there. And if you need more, you can get more. I'm just going to go and add where the feet are. And then these are a little more orange. So I think what I did was add some of that Picked Raspberry to it to kind of create an orange. I'm going to clean that off and grab just a little bit to get that orange. All right. then for the bird itself, I use the Mermaid Lagoon. So I'm going to go ahead and put down water, and then I'm going to add the ink on top. I'm going to do the same here. And then I could have done the beak in that orange and yellow combo too. So I'll wait until it's dry and then we'll go in and do that. So let's put those aside to dry. And then we have the branches. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get them wet. And this time I'm going to go in with, I'm going to start with Mowed Lawn. I think I use Mowed Lawn and green. Wipe off my surface and see if those flowers are dry, and if they're not, they are. If they're not, you can get out your heat tool, but I want them to be a little darker. So I'm just going to concentrate that darker color in the centers, but however you want to do it. So I just got a white scrap and I'm going to cut it down to go behind there, but I'm going to finish coloring them first and then we'll add that little bit. But I want to add some darker spots to my bird. So I'm going to pick up, and I think maybe like on the bottom of his wing. Just going to go touch it in here and there. I didn't get the edge of that very well. And if you wanted his belly to be a slightly different color, you could go in and, I mean, the sky's the limit with the watercolor. I think I'm just gonna, I am mostly going for a watercolor look, so the most I'm probably going to do is come in and put some dots of darker color. And then the one I have, so that, I mean, I have all those 6 colors. Here is the pumice stone. It's kind of a gray, but a brownish gray. I'm going to use a very concentrated bit of it on the eyes, but I want to make sure it's dry or it's going to like blend out. So maybe I'll hold off on that. Let me grab my heat tool. So I'm going to dry that up real quick. All right, so I've got that pumice stone still on there, and I'm just going to go in that little circle bit there. And just like that, we've got his eyes. And then I am going to try to add, first I'm going to take my, let me clean this up. I'm going to take my brush, it's clean, and I'm just going to go over that beak, get it wet, and then put down my paper towel, and it's going to pull up some of that color so I can add, I'm going to go back in and add some yellow and a touch of pink. Get that orange, and now he's got a little orange beak. And I need some more green, and I'm going to add a little when I'm done with that. I want it to be darker, so I'm not adding a bunch of water. And I'm going to come up on the branch. And then here I'm just going to add some shadow. And then I'm going to add a little yellow. I'm really going to water it down. And I'm just going to come in and add some yellow on the edges of some of the leaves. Almost like a highlight, just to give it some variation in color. And those colors will mix up really nice. If you wanted to darken it further, obviously you could go in real dark. Like if I just put that in there and don't add any water, it's a lot darker. So you can really play around with that, with those reinkers. I think I like the way that looks. So clean my surface. All right, so I'm happy with the coloring of my images. I'm going to put my little palette and colors to the side. I'm going to pull my heat tool because I make sure they're good and dry. That way when I put the card together, you want it to be dry so the glue sticks. So I'm going to dry those up and then we'll be back. Our images are dry. I'm going to set those off. So the only other, we need to fussy cut You're Thinking of You. So this particular die from Hero Arts does have, I think it's called Special Day Butterfly. It does come with coordinating dies that will cut out the sentiments included in the stamp set as well as the images. I have misplaced that die, so we are going to be doing some fussy cutting, which is fine too. So we're just going to kind of cut around, and you can get as detailed as you want or not at all. You could certainly just trim it down to some rectangular shape that's pleasing to you. I am going to just kind of stay about 1/8 of an inch away and gently follow along the lines of the letters, but I'm not being perfect at all. There it is. That's all we're going to do to that. And now we have our card base, which I have gotten pink on, which is what I was afraid I was going to do. Let me see if that's going to be covered up. I could just flip my card base over. I'm going to see if I can get it up with my mono eraser. Oh yeah, I got it up, so that'll work. I'm going to make sure all the little things are popped out. And then I'm just going to glue this straight down. I didn't pop it up. You would get a lot more texture. But if you want to pop up all those leaves, you certainly can. I'm not going to. I'm just going to add glue. I'm going to go around the outside, and I'm going to try to touch every leaf. Should help it to lay flat. And I will probably do the center of each flower as well. All right. So we are going to put that down onto the card base. There's no right or wrong. I'm going to lay a acrylic block just so that all those pieces get held down good. And then I kind of forgot about putting those behind there. So let's do that. You're just going to need to trim those pieces down so they fit. Find it easiest to do it like that. And then we're just going to glue it down. Now you could keep them white, and that would be fine. You can add blue in there, whatever you want to do. All right, that is glued down to our card base. And you have a really cool texture, you know, if you kind of gives the illusion of a bossing plate, but without it, so that's cool. And then we're just going to lay these images out and get a feel for the layout. All right, so let's go ahead and glue down that. This I just glued straight down. You can pop any of it up if you want to. It's entirely up to you. I think I popped up one of the birds. And it's kind of up here in the upper third. All right. And then this is the bird I popped up, the little guy that's on top. Got the thinking of you in there. Oops. All right, so he's there. This one I glued straight down. Just like so. And then I also popped this up, so some foam strips. I'm going to pop that up right there. And then I'm just going to tuck in these florals wherever you want to do that. So that looks good to me. Oops. There's those, and then you should have 3 gems in your kit, and we're going to put those gems in the flower centers. Just going to pick those up. Okay, and that finishes off that card. All right, we got our next card. It's your special day. And one thing I didn't mention when we started, you're also going to need if you have it, a background stamp of some sort. That's how we made this here. I am using, I have it in my stamp positioner. It's a floral image from Hero Arts called Whimsy Bold Prints, I think. Whimsy Floral Bold Print. Let me see if I have. Yes. It looks like this. That's the image. But we'll talk about some other options you can do. If you don't have that in your, obviously you may not have that particular stamp in your stash. That's a mouthful. But you probably have something you could use instead. And if not, I'll show you another variation. So, in your kit, you have this panel of watercolor paper that we're going to ink blend and then stamp onto with water. That's how we get that effect. And you also have these images that we need to color and then fussy cut. So I'm going to start with those. You also have these 3 little florals that came from the stuff in your next card kit. So Let's start with these little flowers here. So they are, I use the Pick Raspberry for all the florals. So I'm just going to go in there and put down a light wash of color. Let those dry, and then I'm going to come in and do that same thing in here. And then I'm going to grab just the slightest bit, you can see that, of color on there, and it's going to be real dark. And I'm just going to come in and add those shadows where I want them, and then I'm going to clean off my brush and just go in with some water and kind of blend that out. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that process. So just grab a concentrated amount. And then add water. Now, if all that concentration goes away that you were looking for, we'll let it dry and we can go back and add some more. Now here I've started to go out of the lines, so the easiest way to handle that is to go in with a clean brush. I'm going to add water and then try to pick it up. If that doesn't work, then you can go in with a mono eraser or a white gel pen. So I'm going to dry that real quick so I can go in and add some darker shades. All right, so now I'm going to get some darker, and I'm just going to come in where I want it to be darker. So I just went in with a dry brush and softened those harsher lines if I didn't like them. I'm going to move on. I'm going to also, I think I'm going to need a little bit more picked raspberry. So I'm just going to put some more down. And we're going to go in and do these leaves. So this one, I'm going to wet the leaf, go in with watered down color, and lay it in. And it's okay to leave some white space if you want to when you're watercoloring, but if you don't, that's fine too. I'm going to do this one here. All right. I'm going to go in with some concentrated color and do the centers of these. And then you can add some water and kind of blend it out. So concentrated color. All right. And so more concentrated color. And we're going to go where there should be shadows here. So this leaf is under that, or this petal is under that one. This one is under that one. As it's drying, if it creates harsh edges that you don't like, you just go in a little water and soften them up. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. I want to get some intensified color there, but it needs to be drier. It's just going to blend in. So what I'm going to do is move on to the green. So I have a little green here. And I'll do this one. I'm going to dry off my brush and then take some concentrated color and go in at the base of these small leaves. And then also at the base here. And we need just a little bit more. Oh, that's probably a little too much, but that's all right. The nice thing about these reinkers is I left these set out for over a week, and they don't really dry out. You just add water and the color is good to go again. So I think he sells a watercolor container that's made to put your reinkers in, so you can watercolor with them. It has a cover. All right. I'm going to dry all this so I can go back in and add some depth. All right, so I'm going to go in and just grab straight up reinker. My brush is slightly wet, so I'm going to go in where I want it to be a little darker. And if I want to do any more touching up to these, all right. For the flower center, I'm going to use some yellow. And I'm just going to give a big wash of it. And then a concentrated yellows here in these little, I'm not sure what they are. And I'm going to get some more, go in the center, and just add some shading. Now in that one I added a little bit of pink as well. Give some orange. So it's just up to you what you like. Good with that. I do want to add a little bit more green. I need some concentrated green just on the edges. Whoop, that might be too much. All right. Good with that. And then lastly, we have our butterfly. So I used yellow on the body, or not the body, the wings. So it's up to you how bright you want it to be. The more water you use, the lighter it's going to be. And then on the body, I used the pumice stone again. And I also used it on some of the accents. And so I want to add in like a shadow on the bottom of his body. So I'm going to go in with a concentrated color. And there. All right, I'm going to dry that before I mix any other colors in. And I'm going to add some blue. And so concentrated here. Little circles. Right, and then his body lightened up quite a bit, so I'm going to go back in with some darker. All right, so there's my butterfly, all my images. I'm pretty happy with that. I think I'm going to let it alone. And I am going to get a white gel pen. And I have a few spots here where I kind of went out of the line, so I'm just gonna cover over that with my white pen, and then it's not gonna be so obvious. It cleans that right up. Let's see, one more spot. And I think for fun, I think I'm gonna go in, let this dry, and just add some little dots in the center of my flower. All right, so what I need to do is fussy cut these images out, and then I will be right back. All right, I've got all my images fussy cut, and you can get as detailed as you want. I actually am going to go in here and cut this apart, but I do know that when we go to put our card together, I do cut this into 2 pieces. So if it's hard to do while it's all together, you can maybe wait and see. All right, that looks better. This is part of that set I talked about misplacing the dies for, but we did a little fussy cutting and we survived, so it'll be all right. I'm going to put those to the side, and now we are going to ink blend. This is a white watercolor panel here, so I've got my Mermaid Lagoon, and I have a Pink Fresh Studio large blending brush here. And I am just going to add color all over. And these brushes make blending a breeze. This is so nice. Easy on the wrists. Beautiful even color. All right, I might go a little bit more here. think we are going to need to trim it down, so just as dark as you want it to be. I'm good with that. I'm going to clean up my surface a little. All right, so I'm going to bring in my stamp platform here, and I'm going to put, just because this is magnet based, but I can't put a magnet on it and then stamp on it. So I'm going to put a little adhesive on the back. I'm going to make sure the whole thing will be covered. And then I'm just going to close that. Onto itself. And now I've got that piece, it's not going to move. So what we're going to do is I have just a little spray bottle of water, and we're going to spray. I'm going to move some of the stuff that I don't want to get wet, just in case I get a little crazy with the water. So I'm just misting over it, and you'll see the water bead up. And it might seem like I'm doing a lot, but we're going to mist it on there, and then we're going to stamp it down onto that watercolor paper that's inked. Let's give it a nice press. And I'm going to take my paper towel and just lay it on top and pick up any excess water, and then you can see that come through. Now there's some areas that did not stamp well, so I can do it again. So I'm just gonna put that paper towel on top and to soak up some of the excess water, and I'm gonna do it again. Mist it real good. And this time I'm really going to make sure I press in those areas that maybe I didn't do so well. And then I'll pick up excess water, and yes, that time I got some of those areas that I didn't get, but either way you get this pretty distressed look. So that's a fun way to use your background stamps. You can kind of get a similar technique with like emboss resist, but you would have to stamp it, emboss it, and then ink over it. And that's a more clear, crisp look. This one is a little softer. So we're going to take this. It's not too wet. If you feel like you need to dry it, you can do that. But I need to trim it to 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. So there's 4 1/4. And I'm just taking like 1/8 of an inch off of each side, just so it's nice and even. You don't see those, you know, there's no harsh blending lines, so it's nice and light. So there's that. And now I'll bring all my pieces over. We're ready to assemble the card. So your card base already has the image stamped on it. So we are just going to, I'm going to dry this up just a little. It's a little damp. And what I'm thinking about things, I kind of said, you know, if you don't have a background stamp, you can certainly still ink this up with blue color or whatever matches the coloring that you did. And then take some water. I wonder if I could get a little scrap. I have a scrap here of some watercolor paper, so I'll just show you what I mean. So I would ink it up. Fingerprints on it. Okay, so it's inked up. And then what you could do is spray with water. I like to spray it in my hands if you want bigger flecks. And then pick it up just like we did before, and then you could get this look. So if you don't have a background stamp that you don't want to use, you could kind of have this splatter effect instead, which would be very cool. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So now that is dry. I'm going to put some adhesive on the back, glue that down. And then these images are going to kind of go over that seam right there. And this I cut into two. So I think what we did was right in here, there's 3 flowers on top. And I just cut those off. So you end up with like the little bloom and a flower, and then 3 flowers. And the 3 flowers are going to get tucked in there. This one is going to come out down here, however. And your butterfly is going to go on top. So it's just a matter of getting it where you want it, that we don't get in the way of our sentiment. So I think I'm going to put down my butterfly first and then base everything around that. And I did pop up the butterfly in this big flower, and anything else you feel like you need to. I think like these 2 I popped up. So I'm going to put foam on the back of that. And just like the butterfly, just coming right up to the edge. And then this is going to go in there somehow. And cut off some of that so it slides in there easier. Just like that. So. A little bit of that one as well. And then you have these 3 little flowers that I've just tucked in here or there. Like I didn't like the way you could see that harsh blue line, so I'm going to tuck that one in there. We have one in here. We definitely need one down there. So this one you could put over here. I think I have it right in there. So put some glue on it. Just right in there. And then I'm going to cut up this larger foam square into little squares. I'm going to put one behind this big flower. And one behind this other one here. All right, that finishes that card. Okay, we have one final card here, this hello card, all these fun little garden items. So this is a full stamp from Hero Arts, and the die cuts out every image here and leaves no border, which is kind of cool. You can pull all these out if you want. I find it easier to color something when it's in something larger. So I kind of left this if you wanted to tuck them in there. Obviously this is where we got the flowers from the last one, so they may not stick completely. You could get if you have like a sticky grip mat of some kind. This is waffle flower. So I did not use every single die cut in this set, but you can use whatever you want. I used quite a few. So I used both these tools here, the shovel and the trowel. That's what it's called, I think. Or it's like a rake. I used both boots. I used this little flower, the flower in the pot. I used those two tulip looking flowers, the bee, the seeds, and this flower here. And then I think this flower goes on the hat. So this is what I didn't use. I didn't use the little scissors, this extra leaf, the drops, or this greenery. You certainly could if you wanted to. You can color it all if you want. And there's also a little flower here I didn't use. So we're going to use that same watercolor palette we were using before to color our images. And so let's just dive in. I'm going to start with these. I will start with the boots, which I'm going to pull some yellow. I'm just going to put yellow down, then I'll come back and add shadow later. This little flower is also yellow. And the flower in the pot. And the bee. So I'm going to use concentrated color on his head and that middle stripe and his little stinger. Okay. For pink, this flower here is pink. This is the picked raspberry. I did not stick these down very good to my mat. And this one here. I'm going to grab some concentrated color and see if I can get a little variation. I might have to go back after it's dry and add some more. All right, let's see. We need some greenery, so we'll get the mowed lawn on the leaves. And we got two more over here. All right. And then for the dirt, I use that a very concentrated amount of the pumice stone. The one color we haven't used yet that we're going to use is the Vintage Photo, and we're going to use that for our pots and our hat and some of the things here. So I'm going to get a heavy amount and put it down And then what I'm going to do is go in with some water and pull that color out. Alright, so where's the other one? Here it is. All right, and then for the hat, I really want that color watered down. So go in and put that on. All right, so there's the hat, and then I did the stripe of the hat in pink, which I probably need just a touch more of the picked raspberry. I'm going to go back and add some darker to those, now that I have a little concentrated color. All right, I want to do the handles of the tools. So in that brown, or the vintage photo, and then the tool, the top part of it, I'm going to do in that pumice stone. So it's a gray color. And then I also went with that gray color around the seed packet, and I'm not being perfect. And then I'm going to go back in with some pink. That is very pink. Try to pull some of that up. Okay. And some green. All right. And then for these flower centers, I did a combo of the pink and the yellow, like an orange. All right, that looks good. And then I'm going to add some shadows to the boots. I might need a little bit more yellow. And then I think I put a little bit of that pumice stone at the bottom of the boots. Might want to make sure it's dry. I also put it on these little buckles. And then the wings of the bumblebee, just a little touch of blue. And then for the body, the same with that pumice stone, but very concentrated, so it's almost a really dark gray. All right. And then finally we have the gloves. So we did those in the Mermaid Lagoon. I think I'm going to need a little bit more. Okay. So add some water, and I'm going to start with, I'm going to get these out of the way. I'm going to start with the watering can. I got quite a bit of color on my brush. And we're going to do gloves. I try to do the gloves slightly lighter if I remember right, so they aren't exactly the same color. All right, so I'm gonna try to dry these images. I think I'm gonna have to flip them over and dry them one by one. All right, these images are pretty dry. I'm just gonna go in and add a few details to a few of them. Like I did not add any darker spots on the leaves, so I'm just gonna come in and add a little bit. Not much. Okay, and then I think, what was there was one other thing I wanted to do. Oh, the gloves. I'm good with a watering can. I just put a bunch of color, let it dry, and I like the look of that. So with the gloves, I'm going to come in with a little concentrated color that has water added, and I'm just going to try to create some different shadows where those fingers are. The bottom is darker, and then kind of where the thumb hole is. I'll water that down. Just add some little interest to it. All right, so all those images are colored. I'm done with my watercolors. I'm going to set those aside. And then you should have your card base and this window panel. So I'm going to take that. I don't even think I'm probably going to need any ink. So I kind of want to come in from the top. I'm kind of coming in at an angle from the top left. And certainly if you want it darker, you could add. This is just me cleaning off my brush, and that's going to be more than enough for what I want. And then we're going to put that panel on the top. So I pop mine up. You can leave yours flat and then pop up your images. It's up to you. I'm going to pop this one up, and I'm going to pop up all of those lines on the window. All right, I have all the backing removed on the back of that panel. So I am going to put that down onto my card base. All right, so there's a pretty window. And now we're just going to take all of those die cuts that we colored and start arranging them at the bottom of the panel. So I have my boots, and I think I'm going to kind of glue them together. So I kind of like that placement. I'm just going to hold on to them. Add a little glue. And they are right in here. I kind of have a flower coming out of the one, or kind of peeking behind. You have this little pot here, and you're going to need a craft knife. That is not a craft knife. And I'm just going to put a little slit right there. And that little yellow flower is going to tuck inside that pot. So right where I made that slit, I need to open it up a little. There it goes. Okay. I'm going to glue that in there and hold it together while it dries. You've got your hat is down here. This little daisy flower. And then these are also kind of behind there. So let's glue those on. Just like so. Okay. And then everything else is kind of piled around. We're going to start gluing stuff down. I did not use any foam, I do not believe. Maybe like these two things. Let's go ahead and put that down. And we're going to put down the boots. And the little flower pot in front. Alright, so let's glue that down. It's going to go right in there. And the hat. Right in there. Alright, then we have the gloves. So same thing, I'm going to kind of pile one on top of the other. That's how I want them to look. I'm going to glue them together right back there. Make them a little bit easier because they're going to lay right in here, and then the tools are going to kind of lay around. One tucked back in there like so. Okay. Actually, I think that's where I have it popped up. It's fine. Okay. Put our tools in there. So what I'm going to do right now is get a block and hold some of that down. We have our little bee. The flower goes on the hat, and what's left? The seed packet. All right. So I need to put down that shovel and the, pulled all of that up at once. I did not mean to do that. And it doesn't have to look exactly like mine. Like I'm going to put that right here this time instead. I like that better. Okay. And the little flower I put on the hat. So I'm going to go in there and put it right there. The little bee. Let's see, you have your hello as well. So figure out, I mean, you can move that wherever you want. I have it up in here. And I have the little bee right in there. So what's left is this little seed packet. So I could put it down here. I could tuck it in there. Let's see. I kind of like it tucked in there. And so the only thing then left to do would be to possibly add some foam in different spots. So like on that flower right there, I'm going to go in and add foam behind it so it lays flat. I could do that also behind the boot. Okay. I'm going to put a little piece behind that flower so it sits in front of the boots. All right, and I'm going to do that same thing on this one. And I had originally popped up that, but I kind of like it glued down there. I think that's good. And then the only other thing is to do your hello. So you could even tuck it down in there. That's kind of cute. I think I'm going to keep it up here where I had it, but I want to pop it up so that it's popped up beyond the window. So what I'm going to do is, since I'm going right there where that cross is, I'm going to put a little piece of foam right there and peel off the backing. And then I'm going to put a piece of foam on the back of my hello. And now we'll have a totally flat surface to stick to, and the whole thing can be popped up. That's optional. If you don't want that second layer of foam, you can put it wherever and however you want. Otherwise, that finishes that card. Well, that does it for this card class. I hope you enjoyed these cards. The watercoloring, it's so relaxing. I really enjoyed it. The colors are fun and get you ready for spring. If you are interested in a kit, you can look us up at FromMomentsToMilestones.com and search for card kits there. This is the Hero Art Special Day card kit. I will try to leave the link below. If you have any questions, please leave them here and I'll do my best to answer. Otherwise, have a great day. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.